Welcome back to the channel. I'm EasyP40. So I'm going to try and get through this intro kind of quickly, or at least try to, because we have a lot to go over. This ranking has more weapons than any other ranking I've made so far, having over 50 weapons. So we're just going to jump straight into the criteria. So with the Bo4 criteria, this is actually different from the weapon ranking series criteria. This is not a part of the weapon ranking series. This is a different criteria, just so you're aware. This will be under its own specific criteria. Pack-a-punch versions only, that's kind of obvious. Double pack-a-punch bonus damage is going to be allowed for this list. We are talking primarily about normal mode, not hardcore or realistic mode or anything like that, mainly from a normal mode perspective. We are looking at this primarily from a high round perspective, not really as much from a Easter egg perspective. So we're looking more for damage. That's probably the most important thing, headshot damage specifically. Ammo, rate of fire, and then below that you have things like recoil and accuracy, reload speed, mobility, penetration, stuff like that. Wall weapons are not going to have an advantage when ranking these weapons, just due to how subjective a wall buy is valued. I don't like to do these in this list because everyone has a different opinion on how a wall buy is valued. So what I do is I just give it the low point and not value the wall buy spot at all, and leave it up to you to give it any extra bonus points that it may have for being a wall buy. We are looking for the best performing weapons, not really the most convenient weapon, but if it is going to be compared to a box weapon like a wall gun and a box gun, we are going to give the wall gun the advantage in that case if they are equal ground. We are looking at this primarily from a solo perspective, a little bit of co-op, but mostly from a solo perspective. Wonder weapons are not on this list. However, because this list is on its own and not a part of the weapon ranking series, we have a little bit more freedom. We are going to allow every single non-wonder weapon in this list. I usually don't like to put non-bullet weapons in this list, but I think a lot of people are going to want this, so we are going to allow all non-wonder weapons in this list. All the attachments are available, all the perks are available. We pretty much have free reign with this entire list. Pretty much everything is free game. Real quickly, before we start the list, I am going to go over something real quick. If you've watched my weapon rankings before, you know that I have a little stat card in the top left whenever I show a weapon. Basically just showing some simple stats like ammo, the damage, stuff like that. Well, I've kind of updated those to make them show a little bit more, and I've also included the recommended attachments for the specific weapons, because attachments are going to be a part of this list. It's not the set attachments that you should use, it's just ones that I recommend. The damage is found on Wiki. The damage that you see, the number that you see, will be from Wiki. There's not going to be any asterisks or anything on any of these numbers, just so you know. Headshot damage is found by me in-game, tested. Like in the Black Ops 2 video, if you watched that, these numbers will be about 95 to 100% accurate. They may not be fully accurate, but they are very freaking close to the point where you won't even be able to notice. The ammo that is shown is going to be with the attachments shown, and that's same with the headshot damage. So for example, if I have a weapon with high caliber, the headshot damage shown will be the damage with high caliber, not the damage without it, and the ammo will be with the extended or hybrid mags if it does have it on the weapon. Rounds per minute is obviously how fast the weapon shoots. Again, that is with rapid fire if rapid fire is on the weapon. Total efficiency is basically how much total damage you are putting out with the weapon. It's a combined total of the headshot damage and the ammo, basically multiplied together, and you get that number. The damage per second is going to be a combination of the headshot damage and the rounds per minute. Basically, how much damage are you putting out per second? And obviously, again, the recommended attachments, things like ELO, hybrid mags, rapid fire, suppressor, stock, laser sight, stuff like that, right? I will go over that a little bit maybe, but on some of the weapons, it's kind of obvious what attachments that you should use. But I will go over that briefly with some of the weapons. Also with the stat cards, the stat card color depends on the weapon class that it is. Red signifies that it is an assault rifle. Light blue signifies that it's an SMG. Pink will signify that it's a tactical assault rifle. Dark blue will signify that it's a light machine gun. Orange will signify that it's a shotgun. Purple will signify that it's a sniper rifle. Green will signify that it's a pistol. And with anything else like a special weapon or a rocket launcher or anything like that, the background will be black. And also real quick before the ranking starts, I want to thank you guys for being patient. Obviously, I know some of you were expecting this to be out much sooner, but this takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of research. I started working on this stuff all the way back in October. This has taken over 6 months to prepare for. And granted, at first it was kind of on and off, but for the past couple months, I have been really grinding out Bo4. I have prestiged up almost 300 levels, and that's not even counting all of the custom mutations that I've done, and that's where I did most of my research. I'm very excited to get into this list. We're ready to get this done. Let's just go ahead and get started. At last place, number 53, the Essex Model 07. This is by far the worst gun in the game. It's the only weapon I would say is an F-tier weapon in Black Ops 4. It's a tactical rifle that shoots way too slow because it's a lever action, especially for the damage that it has. It doesn't do much damage at all. Ammo is actually pretty decent, but everything about the gun is so terrible that it's completely irrelevant how much ammo it has. For context, the average weapon in Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, for the standards of those games, the efficiency would be about 400,000 and the DPS should be about 10,000. That's about an average weapon of those games. The efficiency isn't that bad of the Essex model, but man, the DPS is 2,300, which is awful. It's one of the worst I've ever seen when ranking these weapons. And to put more context into that, the Kar 98K from World at War is 1,600 damage per second. So there's only about a 700 damage per second difference between those two weapons, and the Kar is like the worst weapon ever. It's one of them. The Essex also can't have attachments, which makes an already weak weapon in Black Ops 4 even more useless. Literally, the only reason I have ever used the Essex model is for obviously testing in this video and to get dark matter. Other than those two things, there is no reason to use the Essex model. At number 52, and granted, the Essex model is by far the worst gun in the game. We are taking a huge step forward, but still yet, we're going to stay in the tactical rifle category, the M16. While I do like the M16 in OG games, Black Ops 3 turned the Pack-a-Punch version into a burst rather than a full auto. Black Ops 4 continues with that trend, however, it now does far less damage than before. Having around half the headshot damage of the Black Ops 3 M16, this weapon holds absolutely no place in Black Ops 4. 6,900 DPS is still way too low for any weapon in this game. Even though the ammo is alright, again, most weapons in Black Ops 4 have solid ammo. Also, something with the suppressor. The suppressor allows power-ups to be dropped more often. The percentage of that is not revealed, and I do not even know the percentage at all. The difference is noticeable, and that it does justify putting the suppressor into an attachment slot. It is worth it. So if you can have a suppressor, I do recommend using it. At 51, I have the RK7. An essentially downgraded RK5 has no place in this game. The only real upside to this weapon is that there is more ammo for this than the RK5, but that's just mainly because of extended mags. You can put extended mags 2 on this weapon, which allows the mag to increase upwards to 71. The only reason I really have this ahead of the M16 is the DPS is so much higher. You're going to kill so much quicker with this than you would with the M16. Even though the M16 is more efficient, it's not by a whole lot, and overall there's just many more positives to using the RK7. At number 50, I have the SOG. The SOG is an SMG that has a good rate of fire, but not great ammo or damage. The Operator mod allows you to dual-wield the SOG, and if used correctly, it can be helpful. However, it's just not going to get you very many kills, and you're going to burn through ammo like crazy, and due to the inaccuracies of dual wielding, you'll waste a lot of ammo. Which is why context matters, because although the DPS is impressive in these analytics, all dual wield weapons have super scuffed analytics, especially in the DPS department. This gun is kind of fun to use, but in the SMG category, it's littered with weapons that have a really high DPS, that have great ammo, that are much more accurate, and overall, all these other SMGs just have such better qualities to them, which is why I put the SOG this low on the list. But you probably could argue it for it to be a little bit higher if you're playing a specific way. At number 49, I have the MP40. The MP40 statistically is better than the old MP40s, but the RPM is a little bit lower than those old MP40s, and it's trading that for ammo. It does have more ammo than those MP40s. I more so would compare this version of the MP40 to the Black Ops 3's HG40. And the reason why is because the HG40 came with more ammo, had more damage, and had a lower rate of fire. That is exactly the case with this MP40. There is no real reason to use this MP40 in my personal opinion, especially because there is no wall buy for it. The MP40 in this game is fun to use. I will say, I love the feeling of the MP40, and whenever Blackout was in its prime, I loved using this thing in Blackout. But in Zombies, not really a purpose to use it. Okay, this one's going to be a bit tricky, but at 48, we have the MOG. Long ago, when this game came out, the MOG was one of the best weapons in this game. For context, this weapon had the ability to one-shot headshot past the health cutoff, which is around 35. It had a great rate of fire, it had incredible range, the damage was awesome. However, A few months went by, and Treyarch decided to nerf it. The MOG got such a big nerf. It may have been the biggest nerf in Zombies history for any regular gun. The range was nowhere near as good. The rate of fire was still pretty decent, but you could tell there was a little bit of a nerf. It came with less ammo, not a whole lot less, but it still came with less ammo, and it would no longer one-shot past round 35. Now, it struggles to even one-shot into round 30 when fully pack-a-punched. The MOG is still great for Easter eggs. If you're doing Easter eggs, it's a very good gun for that, because when you're doing Easter eggs, you're on a lower round when you're completing them. It's not bad for boss zombies either. Granted, it used to be better, but it's still not bad. But the thing is that there's so many other weapons that are also decent for taking out boss zombies in Black Ops 4. This list is kind of more catered to the high rounds. And in those later rounds, you're going to find the MOG to be super underwhelming. And honestly, you're going to run out of ammo with this thing pretty quickly, and you're not going to get that many kills with it. Analytically, it's probably got the second weakest analytics in this game. The one that's worse is obviously the S6 model because of how slow it is. But you're not going to get that many kills with it. The DPS is nothing special. I love the MOG, I really do. It used to be one of my favorite weapons. But after the nerf, man, it's not even close to what it used to be. And if you don't know that, there's a lot of people that actually don't know that, and I've seen that across YouTube, of people still saying, like, the MOG is one of the better weapons, maybe for Easter eggs, but other than that, though, no, man. You need to use the MOG again, trust me. At number 47, we have the Strife, which I know a lot of people love the Strife, but again, I think this is a bit overrated. It is a great starting weapon. Honestly, this is my personal favorite starting weapon by a country mile. I will start the game with a Strife pretty much every game. The reason why is because it has a stiletto knife as its operator mod, which allows you to one knife from rounds 1 through 4. After that, it becomes a 2 knife, but it's incredibly good for points early on. The main reason it gained so much popularity, though, was because on 9, which is the most popular map on launch, and it still probably is the most popular Bo4 map, you can get this thing within the first few rounds if you just do a couple challenges. Not only do you get this thing, you get it pack-a-punched, which made the map incredibly easy to set up on, because once you get this, taking out boss zombies is very, very easy. And it's a solid weapon, it's very good for that, but when you dig into the other weapons, you figure out that these other weapons can do exactly what the Strife does, but better. Like SMGs and all that, it can do what the Strife does, but it can do it while having more ammo, it has more damage, they have better rate of fires, and their overall analytics are much more impressive. So overall, I just can't put the Strife really any higher than what it is. It is a solid weapon, and I do love the Strife, but if I'm being objective about this, there's so many better options out there. At number 46, surprisingly, the Argus. The Argus is actually a one-shot to the head in normal games throughout the entirety of the game, even past round 35. Although it does do more damage than the Black Ops 3 Argus, I feel like the Black Ops 3 Argus was a bit easier to use. This is just kind of a personal opinion. When I'm hitting headshots, I thought that the Black Ops 3 version was a little bit easier to hit headshots with, and maybe I'm wrong on that, but that was just kind of a personal experience. It's still a fine weapon to use, and it's obviously weird because slug shotguns and zombies just happen to feel weird, and they tend to be a bit misfitting. If you haven't used it, give it a shot, because it is better than the Black Ops 3 version, I will say that. And if you want to compare it to the Black Ops 3 version, go right on ahead. I think you'll like this gun more than you did in Bo3. Okay, so at 45, 44, and 43, we're going to go over some sniper rifles. While these snipers are quite strong, in Black Ops 4, the tempo is increased, and you're going to be in a lot more CQB situations. This is going to make snipers a lot harder to use, especially bolt actions. All three of these are similar in ability, but when ranking these, it is going to come down to just kind of some small details. Overall, though, I would say the worst sniper in this game, at 45, and it's going to hurt to do this because I love the sniper, it's the Paladin. Now, the Paladin is by far the most powerful sniper in the game. With the unpack-punched Paladin, it is going to one-shot to the head until round 31, which is absolutely insane for an unpack-punched sniper. There are pack-punch snipers that don't even do that damage. And when you upgrade the Paladin, it becomes a one-shot to the head for the entire game, to the point where you don't even have to double pack-a-punch this thing in order to get a one-shot headshot for the entirety of a normal game. However, it lacks in rate of fire, and there is no penetration due to the fact that firing explosive rounds allows no penetration. I don't know why they added in explosive rounds for some of these weapons, but most of them do not benefit from this. It is fun to use, don't get me wrong, I love using the Paladin, but without that penetration power, its effectiveness is going to drop off a ton. Not only that, but even though the damage is great, all the snipers, when fully upgraded, aside from one, is going to be able to one-shot headshot through the entirety of the game in normal mode. The Paladin, sure, it does more damage, but the one-shot capability to the head, you're not going to really have an advantage in normal mode compared to those other bolt actions, because they can just be upgraded. So really, it just doesn't have an advantage in the damage category to the head, in normal mode at least. In hardcore, sure, but we're talking about normal mode for this list. At 44, I am going to put the Locust here. It is slightly better than the Paladin, mainly just because it shoots a little bit faster and the penetration power is there for the Locust, and it's not for the Paladin. It's not as good as the Black Ops 3 Locust, not even close, and it's mainly because the body damage on the Black Ops 3 version was actually really good, and in Black Ops 4 the body damage is not that great. Funny thing about the Locust is that when you're playing zombies in Black Ops 4 with your friends, you're actually going to be hearing the Locust shot go off if somebody else has it in their inventory, and you'll actually be able to hear the Locust being shot as if it's from your own screen.
If Nicky Boy Tesla could only see this.
At 43, this is the Koshka. The Koshka is a little bit ahead of these other two, mainly just because it has a bit more ammo and the attachments, in my opinion, are a little bit better because you can put Laser Sight 2 on the Koshka, making it much easier to hip fire with it. I didn't notice too much out of the Strelok Operator mod, but I do hear some people do like it. I didn't notice anything myself, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I need to test it a bit more, but I just didn't notice anything with it. So I don't really recommend using it, but if you want to give it a shot, feel free. Also, the Koshka is a wall buy compared to the other two, despite costing more than a freaking Ford Mustang. It is nice to be able to buy ammo off the wall for this thing. At 42, I have the Rampart, which is kind of the Scar of Black Ops 4. You're expecting the damage for this thing to be incredibly good, while the rate of fire is not going to be that great. However, the rate of fire is that of the Man-O-War at 517 rounds per minute, but the damage is incredibly disappointing. It is average at best for an assault rifle. Actually, I would probably say below average because it needs high caliber just to make this thing, I would say, an average damage for an assault rifle for Black Ops 3 and 4 standards. This is supposed to be the powerhouse of BO4 ARs, and it falls way short in that. It is not a bad weapon, but with Black Ops 4 assault rifles, the roster is absolutely stacked, and I would rather use any assault rifle in this game ahead of the Rampart, especially because the Rampart is box exclusive, and there are so many wall assault rifles in this game, all of which that are better than the Rampart. The body damage is good. It is the best in the class, but I don't prioritize body damage over headshot damage unless it's absolutely absurd. And it is good, don't get me wrong, the body damage is very good, but it's not enough to where I would take this over any other assault rifle. You can argue it's not the worst, but it's definitely bottom 3 at the bare minimum, probably bottom 2, but I don't really understand why you would want to take this over any other assault rifle, especially, again, ones that are on the wall. Coming in slightly ahead of the Rampart at number 41, this is the SWAT, which I definitely believe is right there with the Rampart as the 2 worst assault rifles in the game. While it does have great ammo, the headshot damage is the worst among the assault rifles in Black Ops 4. With high caliber, it ties for the worst headshot damage, but without it, it is the worst headshot damage for a Black Ops 4 assault rifle, and it's absolutely terrible. The rate of fire isn't anything too special, making the DPS overall a little bit below average. The reason I put this ahead of the Rampart, though, is it just has better attachments and it has more ammo. Also, when you're camping with this thing, because it has more ammo, especially in the magazine, you have 94 rounds in the mag when upgraded with extended mags, so you're going to be able to keep the zombies off of you much better than you would with a Rampart, which only has 40 rounds in the mag, and you won't have to reload nearly as often. Not only that, but the reload is just super quick with a SWAT. Granted, it is pretty quick, the Rampart, especially with fast mags as well, but overall, though, I just had a much easier time using the SWAT than I did the Rampart, and that's why I put it ahead of the Rampart. You could probably argue between those two, but I think the SWAT does get the edge. At number 40, this is the KN-57. While it's not quite as good as the KN-44 from Black Ops 3, the KN is still an alright option for Black Ops 4 since it's kind of just your basic average assault rifle off the wall. It does practically the same damage as the old KN and has the same ammo, but it does shoot a little bit slower. The KN-44 shot at 600 rounds per minute. That's the Black Ops 3 version. The KN-57 shoots at 600 rounds per minute as well, but that's with rapid fire. If you don't have rapid fire, it's more along the lines of about 540 rounds per minute or so. I do not recommend running extended mags with the KN, and the reason why is because with hybrid mags, it is already going to make your ammo in the mag go from 50 to 64, and it's going to allow you to reload quicker. Extended mags will then take that 64 and turn it into 75. So in my opinion, it's just not really worth using as an attachment slot just for 11 more bullets. I don't think the can is much better than the bottom two ARs, but it is a wall buy, so since they're kind of on the same level, I do have to give it the edge over those two. At number 39, another assault rifle, the Hitchcock M9. This one is a bit different. The Hitchcock shoots explosive rounds, which means there's no penetration. Not only that, but you will damage yourself a little bit if you shoot it up close, which will happen quite often. Unless, of course, you're using PhD slider, which I have no problem using PhD, but if I'm going to use PhD, I want to use it for the right weapons. If the weapon sucks, I just don't really see a reason to run a specific perk just to make a mediocre weapon's flaw not apparent when I could just simply get a better performing weapon. But the good news with the Hitchcock, I will say, is the damage is actually pretty good, and the rate of fire is also pretty decent. Ammo is a bit subpar, but it's not really the worst. If you get this out of the box, it isn't the worst thing to use. It is definitely a step above the assault rifles that I just named, but overall, I think there's just a few flaws with this, combined with the fact that you just can't put attachments on the Hitchcock. At number 38, I have the GKS, which is a very versatile weapon, especially for an SMG. It doesn't have any glaring weaknesses, but it also doesn't do anything extremely unordinary. Do not use the operator mod. It's just a burst. It doesn't make the weapon any better at all. It's literally useless. While it is versatile, I also don't think there's very much identity to the GKS, and what I mean by that is there's just no pinpoint area where it's going to be extremely useful. It's just kind of decent for various situations in Black Ops 4, whether you're camping, training, running the Easter egg. It just depends on what you're trying to do. It's just kind of all right for just all of that. The ammo is kind of okay. The rate of fire is all right for an SMG. The damage is pretty good for an SMG. I would say it's one of the better SMGs for damage. If you like accurate weapons, this is a very accurate and stable, no recoil SMG, and it's a wall weapon. At 37, I have the Daemon, essentially a buffed up Chickum from Black Ops 2. This is a really good SMG for getting zombies out of your way quickly. Attachments are pretty weird with this thing. Rapid fire is not needed, as rapid fire more so fluctuates depending on how fast you hit the burst. I use this a ton in my tests, and honestly, I don't see a reason to run rapid fire with a Daemon, because either way, there is just not much difference in the rate of fire if you're using rapid fire or no rapid fire. You will notice a slight bit of difference, but the difference is so minimal, I just don't recommend using it as an attachment slot. Either way, rapid fire doesn't change much when it comes to the Daemon, so personally, I would use something else, but the attachments for this thing are kind of weird. I honestly have gone back and forth with what attachments I do recommend with a Daemon. I think you need to play with this a bit more to see what fits the Daemon for yourself. At number 36, I have the Switchblade. The Switchblade is kind of like the Daemon, but it's just a full auto version of that, which you have more control over the ammo, and your rate of fire is going to be quicker. The Switchblade is actually really good for taking down boss zombies. SMGs in general are actually pretty decent for that because they all have a really high DPS. So when you're using the Strife, like I said earlier, the Strife is good for taking down boss zombies like on 9, killing those gladiators. It's really good for that. But the thing is that all these other SMGs are just as good, if not better, than taking the boss zombies out with the Strife. Obviously, it's a bit weird of a weapon. It does feel a little bit weird, and some of the attachments are kind of strange. Having a stabilizer on an SMG is just not something you see on most other SMGs. I definitely would give it a shot, because at first I thought this thing was going to suck, but I was quite surprised by how quickly it did kill, and it is pretty decent. The ammo's not too bad. I would give it a shot if I were you. At number 35, I have the Rampage. This is a full auto shotgun, and I'd compare it heavily to the Spaz from Black Ops 1. And the reason I would is because the Spaz from Black Ops 1, really low damage, really fast shotgun. The thing is, though, the Rampage does a little bit more damage than that, shoots a little bit quicker than that, and has a crap ton more ammo than that. So this is better than that in pretty much every single way. But that being said, the Rampage still is a weaker shotgun for the most part. It is definitely the weakest in terms of damage in the entire game, but even though it is on the weaker side of shotguns, it still is a fine option just due to the fact that the rate of fire and the ammo is just super good for a shotgun. At number 34, I have the MX9. I really like the aesthetics of the MX9, but the precision of this weapon isn't the greatest. You can't really see much unless you're using the iron sight, so don't really use a red dot sight or an ELO because the pack-a-punched muzzle is actually going to blind you a little bit. You're not going to really be able to see a whole lot. Iron sights is the best to use for the MX9. Stats-wise, this is pretty good. The damage is good for an SMG. The rate of fire is also pretty good, and the ammo is all right. The analytics are solid. The thing with analytics is that context does matter. And if the weapon that you're using tends to be a bit inconsistent on the accuracy or the recoil or anything like that, the numbers do become a little bit scuffed. Not necessarily scuffed, I guess, but more so you have to pay attention to the things outside of the numbers, because when you're looking at these weapons, you can't just look at the numbers. You have to look at everything, and that's something that I really want to stress. Cannot stress that enough. And while the downsides of the MX9 aren't exactly the worst, it does get a couple spots back because of the recoil and the accuracy and not really being able to see much from the pack-a-punch muzzle. Overall, though, it is a quick killing SMG. I would compare it heavily to the SMGs that I had just named between the Switchblade and the Daemon, except for this is a wall weapon, and they're on a similar level, so it is a solid option. At number 33, I have the Maddox. This is one of the quicker assault rifles in Black Ops 4. The Maddox is going to be kind of a hybrid between an HVK and an FFAR from Black Ops 3. Not only that, but it is a wall buy. The damage is the second lowest in the AR class, just slightly above the SWAT. If the SWAT has high cal, they're pretty similar, pretty much the exact same damage. But without high caliber, the SWAT is going to be lower than the Maddox in terms of damage. Good thing about the Maddox is even though the damage isn't great, the fire rate is extremely quick. It does get a pretty good boost when you pack punch this in terms of the fire rate. The attachments make this extremely quick as well, having the ability to put on Quick Draw 2 and Fast Mags 2. I personally don't care for Quick Draw 2, but I do love Fast Mags 2. The Operator mod is going to turn this into a quick bursting weapon. Again, I don't recommend using this. Anyway, the Maddox is really good. Definitely thumbs up on this one. At number 32, I have the Swordfish. The Swordfish is a 4-round burst weapon, but when you pack punch it, it turns into a 6-round burst weapon. The stats and analytics for this are actually quite good. Unfortunately, though, this weapon just isn't the greatest thing to use, even though the stats and analytics are great. You have to put context into this. The Swordfish has a couple of downsides to it, such as obviously the 6-round burst, which not a lot of people like burst, let alone 6-round burst. The burst delay is not great, and you're going to waste a lot of ammo with this weapon. So you have to take that into account. The Operator mod is, yet again, not worth using. It is called the Pentaburst, and what it will do is it will allow you to shoot 1 extra bullet per burst. So when you have the 4-round burst, it turns into a 5-round burst. And when you have the pack punch version, which is a 6-round burst, it turns into a 7-round burst. Not worth using. Overall, the Swordfish is all right, especially for a wall weapon. It's not the worst thing in the world. However, I do think there is a better burst weapon in the tac rifle category. This is going to be our number 31 spot, the ABR. The ABR is another burst weapon, kind of like the Swordfish, but I think it's a bit better, even though the stats and analytics do not. The ABR has a quicker burst delay, and it's a bit more consistent while being more efficient with the burst shots and not wasting nearly as much ammo. Not to mention, the body damage is significantly better than most other rifles, being 550 body damage, so you're going to be able to one burst for quite a while in the game, even if you're missing headshots. The Operator mod, I actually am going to recommend. The Operator mod is called the Repeater. When you hold down your burst, it will continuously get quicker as you hold it down for longer, so it'll seem more like a fully automatic weapon compared to just a regular burst weapon. This is going to help tremendously, especially when camping. It is going to hold off the zombies much, much better. From a numbers perspective, yes, the Swordfish is better, but I've ran plenty of tests on both weapons. I've asked a couple of my friends what they think of these weapons. Everyone seems to be unanimous on this. The ABR is the better weapon. Test both of these if you don't believe me. The ABR is the better weapon of the two. At number 30, the Spitfire. And I know a lot of people love the Spitfire. It's extremely popular in the Bo4 Zombies community. But I gotta be honest, this thing burns through ammo like crazy. And I'm not really blaming the rate of fire, because the better rate of fire that you have, the better your gun will be. But the recoil for this thing is terrible. And the ammo is not great either. Granted, you can go buy more ammo off the wall because it is a wall weapon. But the thing is, we're looking at this strictly from a performance perspective, and there are plenty of other weapons that are going to perform better than the Spitfire. I do recommend the Operator mod called Wildfire, and what it will do is it will increase the Spitfire's RPM by about 350 to 400 RPM. I've heard several people talk about the Spitfire being one of the best guns in this game,
but I'm not with it. I don't think it's one of the best guns in this game. I think it's a great weapon, and I think it's very fun to use, but I'd be lying if I said this was one of the best weapons in the game. And granted, maybe I'm missing something, and if I am, feel free to comment that down below. I would like to hear your guys' opinion on this. If you are using the Spitfire, I highly recommend that you use Cryo Freeze with this, as you will be able to slow the zombies down to an extreme extent, especially with the fast rate of fire. Overall though, the Spitfire is a solid weapon to use. I do recommend it. At number 29, the Grav, which is essentially the Black Ops 4 version of the Galil. I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is the Galil is back in Black Ops 4 and does a little bit more damage than what it did before. Having a bit more freedom to put your attachments on is also nice. The bad news is pretty much everything aside from the damage is worse. The RPM was 750 in previous versions, while the Grav has about 550 RPM, which is a hefty downgrade. The ammo also got a bit of a downgrade, especially if you're without extended mags. The weapon itself is still solid and it's very smooth, but with the reduction in performance, it had to fall several spots in this list compared to others. At number 28, I have the Peacekeeper. I originally thought this would be a bit lower, but with the right attachments, it gets a little bit of a higher spot. The Peacekeeper is very similar to the Black Ops 3 version. However, you can customize it to however you like, and having great attachments like hybrid mags, rapid fire, and suppressor make it much better than the Black Ops 3 version. Other than the fact that the Bo4 version obviously had better collateral damage, but that's just because Treyarch decided to mess with the penetration power in this game for some reason. Honestly though, solid weapon, give it a shot if you get it out of the box. At number 27, the Escargot. Real quick disclaimer, I do not like this gun at all. And I know several other people out there that do not like this gun at all. However, the performance of this weapon is very, very good. One thing to note is that it does shoot these projectile-like objects that don't seem like regular bullets. They also do not do any collateral damage, which bumps it down a couple points. But it's just a weird weapon overall. While the numbers are great, the recoil is absolutely terrible. However, the easiest fix for this is to simply just hip fire with the Escargot. Surprisingly, its accuracy is somewhat decent when hip firing, and in my opinion, it's by far the best way to use it. This isn't my preferred choice of weapon in zombies, and from what I hear across the community, it just doesn't seem like anyone's a fan of it, but we have to be objective with this list. The Escargot is a very, very good weapon. At number 26, I have the M1927. So I'd like to point out that the M1927 is actually very good analytically, but it's got a similar problem to the MX9. The weapon just takes up way too much of the screen, and you can hardly see in front of you when your shots are firing. Not only that, it does suffer from not having attachments like fast mags while others do. Something interesting is that the weapon actually doesn't appear in the Chaos storyline, so you'll only be able to use this in Aether story maps. If you're not a fan of clunky weapons that take up half the screen when aiming, then you probably won't like the M1927, but the upside to this gun is that the ammo is good, the damage is great, and the rate of fire is great. At number 25, the Cap 45. Yet again, we have another shocker. The Cap 45 is actually a decent option in this game, unlike the Cap 40 from Black Ops 2. For starters, I don't think you should use this as your primary Black Ops 4 weapon, just mainly due to the fact that it just doesn't have enough ammo. Similar to something like the Rampage I was talking about, a backup weapon, this is a perfect backup weapon, especially on a map like 9. This thing tears through boss zombies. Absolutely shreds, because the DPS is super, super high. I would essentially say that the Cap 45 is a Strife on absolute steroids. It's got more ammo, it's got more damage, and the rate of fire is so much better, especially with rapid fire too. Overall, I was very impressed with the Cap 45. I thought this would be one of the worst weapons in the game, and honestly, you can argue for this to be even higher. But I think all things considered, this is probably the best place for it. At number 24, I'm going to be honest, this is kind of a weird one. This is the Welling. I had trouble placing the Welling because I think it's just far too situational. There are some people that would legitimately rank this in the top 10, and then there are others that would rank it in the bottom 10. And that's always been my problem with weapons like this. The main reason players will use this in high round games is for when they get insta-kills, they will just spam the Welling to get kills as quickly as they can. Other than that, I pretty much never see anyone use the Welling in Bo4, and that's including myself. And before anyone says, well, I don't like it because it's not the Mustang and Sally. My guy, it is literally the same concept. The only difference is the name, the ammo being a little bit more, and the damage being a little bit lower. Other than that, it's still a fine gun, pretty much as effective as the Mustang and Sally. It's a good gun for sure, but it all depends on how you use it, because even with PhD, it's very easy to be less effective with a Welling if you're not paying attention to how you're using it. This is a weapon I would honestly love to hear your guys' take on, because The Welling, as well as other grenade launcher pistols, I have contemplated for the longest time on these weapons because I don't personally have a comfortable stance on these types of weapons, not because I like or dislike these types of weapons, I just have really mixed feelings on them. Not because they're bad or good or anything like that. It really just depends. My opinion is super fluctuant, and I would love to hear your opinion.
At number 23, we have the ICR. It's kind of crazy how popular the ICR is, to be honest, because in BO3, everyone loved the ICR. And when it came back in BO4, it was very, very loved. Granted, a lot of people did hate it in multiplayer because of how OP it was. In Black Ops 4, nothing much changes about the ICR compared to its Black Ops 3 counterpart. It still is a laser beam, it does a good amount of damage, and not to mention, it's a wall buy on every single map. However, it's not better than the Black Ops 3 version, and I went over this a while back on why it's the collateral damage. But one thing that brings the ICR down in this game compared to the other Black Ops 4 assault rifles, the attachments. No fast mags, no extended mags, no hybrid mags, no rapid fire, no suppressor, no operator mod, none of that. So there's no real great attachments that you could put on the ICR. It's a really, really good assault rifle, but because other assault rifles and other weapons have way better attachments, they get a much better ranking than the ICR, simply because the ICR just does not have great attachments. It still is a really good weapon, and I highly recommend it, but as you look into other weapons, you'll see why they are ahead, simply because attachments for them, they got extended mags. Some of them have rapid fire, some of them have operator mods that put it ahead of the ICR. But from a base perspective, honestly, without attachments, this is probably the best assault rifle in the game, but with attachments, it's not even top 3. At number 22, just ahead of the ICR, the Vapor. Now, I just said about attachments for the ICR. The Vapor is literally better than the ICR simply because of attachments. It's a pure combination between a lot of ARs. I would say that the closest comparison to the Vapor is probably the HVK in terms of how it acts, but this has way better damage. This beats out the ICR mainly due to attachments, like I said. Honestly, they perform at essentially the exact same rate in terms of efficiency and DPS, but the Vapor does shoot a little bit faster, and it also has fast mags, high cal, rapid fire, and suppressor. Not only that, but it also features an operator mod, the Bayonet, which is essentially a Bowie knife attached to the weapon. It is an incredible, incredible way to earn points. It's just simply buying the Vapor off of the wall. The reason I don't have fast mags in the recommended attachments is because of the main attachments for the Vapor. I think you can go without fast mags because the regular reload is already decently quick. But I think rapid fire, high cal, and suppressor are all more important than fast mags for the Vapor. That's just my opinion. You do whatever you like. Overall, it's a fantastic weapon. Like I said, the main reason why it's better than the ICR is just attachments. Once you get this thing fully attached, it's essentially an ICR, but better. And yes, it is a wall weapon on every single map. At number 21, I had this a little bit lower at first, but this is going to be the Titan. I have used the Titan a ton throughout my tests, and after extensive use, I believe it deserves a pretty good boost in this list. If you guys remember the BRM from Black Ops 3, this is pretty much the same thing as that, except maybe a little bit different. The operator mod is what mainly makes the difference between this and the BRM. The operator mod is called the Oppressor, and what it will do is it will slow down zombies when you shoot, making this very, very useful for camping. And while it isn't the fastest thing in the world, it does have a ton of ammo, and it's really reliable with how accurate it is. And not to mention, it is a wall weapon on pretty much every map, albeit it is expensive at 3,750 points. It is worth the price if running the right strategy. The DPS is a little bit low, it is below average, but the operator mod compensates for that low DPS and makes it so much better. Definitely an interesting weapon. I definitely recommend trying this out. At number 20, I have the VMP. This VMP has a very, very high amount of ammo, and it doesn't really lack anything. The damage is probably the closest thing to being subpar about the VMP, but for an SMG, the damage is not that bad, to be honest with you. Especially if you're getting 700 rounds, it's actually pretty decent. This is a very good weapon, definitely better than the VMP from Black Ops 3. Even though it is not a wall weapon, it performs at a much better rate. I do recommend giving it a shot. And right above the VMP at number 19, I'm going to put the Cordite here, which is basically the same thing as the VMP, but it's a bit more stable in my opinion. When I used the Cordite, it felt more like a small assault rifle, which is really good because the biggest difference between assault rifles and SMGs, other than obviously the collateral damage, is the stability.
Most of the time, you'll end up wasting less ammo with ARs since they have less recoil and are usually more accurate and are more just equipped for an extended range. Even if it's not too far out, it's still a safer bet when compared to an SMG. And that's why, despite some SMGs having an analytical advantage, they may fall short to some ARs that lack in a specific statistical area. I am happy to say that the cordite is very, very smooth, especially for an SMG. The operator mod for this gun is the belt mag, and I strongly do not recommend using this. I have seen some people use this, but the thing is that after about 55 rounds of continuous firing, your weapon will overheat and you'll have to recharge it, which is terrible, and it takes much longer than just reloading. I recommend not running this, just use basic attachments. To be honest with you, you'll be much better off. Not only that, there's no indication on when your gun will overheat, and also not to mention, with extended mags, the cordite holds 150 rounds when upgraded. So it's not like you'll have to reload very often anyway, and the reload itself doesn't take long. So I just don't recommend the operator mod. Don't use it, man. But overall, I was very surprised with the cordite. I did not think this would be this high on the list. At number 18, I have the Reaver, which is kind of a weird weapon, but let's talk about it. The Reaver is kind of a hybrid between a crossbow and a ballistic knife. It's a 2-round burst. I don't know why, but it does a good amount of damage. It's certainly one of the more unique weapons because with the Reaver, you can actually pick up the bolts after you shoot them, allowing you to reuse ammo. Not only that, this is one of the best weapons for taking out boss zombies. This was a bit difficult to rank, given that you can continuously pick up more and more ammo after using it, but it is limited depending on how much you shoot. So if you end up shooting like 60 bolts at once, you're not going to just be able to pick them all up at the same time. But I think overall this spot works fine. It's just kind of hard to rank this. This is why I mostly rank bullet weapons, because weapons like this become extremely difficult to kind of vary between the bullet weapons. But I just think the weapons above this perform at a better rate, even though some of them don't have quite the ammo or can't pick up ammo like the Reaver can, and that's going to be an incredible advantage for the Reaver. I would prefer to have the weapons above this because of their overall performance. At number 17, I have the SG-12, which is far, far better than the MUG or the Rampage. Much more consistent, and it's just much more balanced. The SG-12 doesn't really have as many weaknesses as those other shotguns. The SG-12 is great, but Black Ops 4, just in general, it's not really a shotgun type game. Most of you BO3 players, I think, are going to say, like, man, Black Ops 4 just has super weak shotguns. And granted, the Black Ops 4 shotguns are not as good as the BO3 shotguns. Sure, that's understandable. But the thing is with Black Ops 4 is that it just doesn't fit the shotgun game nearly as well, mainly because BO3 shotguns were needed more due to all the boss zombies that you'd have to face. In BO4, you have your special weapon, which is mainly going to take out boss zombies. Shotguns can help sometimes, but even if you're going to use a weapon to take out a boss zombie, shotguns aren't exclusively the best option because, one, shotguns aren't as good in BO4, obviously, compared to BO3. And two, other weapons have caught up when it comes to taking out boss zombies, like SMGs and stuff. Treyarch made sure to lay off on making OP shotguns in BO4 after creating a literal super team of shotguns in Black Ops 3. The SG-12 is full auto when upgraded, and from my research, it has a slightly better one-shot capability compared to the MUG. It's not much, it's just slightly, but it is slightly better, while also shooting at a much quicker rate and having much more ammo. One thing I will note about the SG-12, do not use Laser Sight 2. If you use Laser Sight 2, the damage is going to fall off at a quicker rate for the SG-12. I don't know why they made it like this, but when I was testing this with a non-fully upgraded SG-12, so basically I pack-punched this once, the one-shot capabilities fell off, I believe, at about round 25, and with Laser Sight 2, it fell off, I believe, at about round 21. It may have been actually a little bit lower than that. But regardless, don't use Laser Sight 2. It's an absolute waste of an attachment. It's going to make your gun worse. All right, at number 16, I'm probably going to shock some people again with this one. This is Y-hander. Let's talk about the positives first, okay? The ammo is obviously fantastic. It ranks 3rd in total ammo. It's got 900 rounds without Bandolier Bandit. With Bandolier, it has 1,200, which is insane. It's a mega efficient weapon with over 1 million efficiency. Now, let's get into the bad. The aiming speed and the moving speed when aiming are absolutely atrocious. This gun needs stock and it needs quick draw, especially stock. You can maybe roll without the quick draw, but you definitely need stock. But another problem with this gun, you cannot put attachments on this weapon, which I usually don't like to compare weapons with and without attachments to each other because I like an even playing field. But for this list, everything goes. and not having attachments, unfortunately, is going to put this weapon at a bit of a disadvantage. And to dive a little bit deeper, this isn't really good or bad. The damage and fire rate are average, which, like I said, not necessarily bad, but in this part of the list, there's not much room for mediocrity since, again, this weapon lineup is so strong. I will say that if you are camping, this is definitely the best way to use the Zweihander, but if you are training, I do not recommend using this, especially over the weapons ahead of this. The reason I have the weapons ahead of this is because you can camp with those weapons at a decent rate and train with them at a much better rate than the Zweihander. At number 15, this is going to be the Micro MG 9mm. This is the best SMG in Black Ops 4, in my opinion. If you guys like the Spitfire, you are going to love this weapon. It's basically the Spitfire, but on mega steroids. You know how sometimes people complain about guns in BO3 and BO4 not being very unique? This is literally a death machine formed as an SMG that can be equipped with a crap ton of attachments and shoots faster than Sonic the Hedgehog can run. The only downside to the Micro MG is the windup, which honestly isn't really that bad, especially once you add rapid fire. It holds 1,088 total rounds, assuming you have extended mags too. And when you use Bandolier Bandit as a perk, it gets bumped up to 1,360 total ammo, a number that is so high that the game doesn't even show your ammo count when it's fully loaded. When you're using the Micro MG, I recommend that you use Steady Grip to use this weapon because I honestly think that the best way to use this is to just hip fire it. Laser sight helps too, but Steady Grip is more important. If you want to ADS, the grip will definitely help, but I found hip firing to be much easier and quicker due to the wind-up time. It is definitely a weird gun, but once you get it fully kitted out, you're going to be set. It's an extremely fun and very high-performing weapon to use. At 14, this is going to be the Double Cross. This used to be called the Echo Hawk Dual Bore for anyone who has not played Black Ops 4 in a while. It changed its name to the Double Cross. One thing about the Double Cross I will say is it's actually not a 2-round burst as some people think. The weapon itself has 2 barrels, and so every time you fire, 1 fires out of each barrel. Regardless, the weapon is full auto, and it has an absurd amount of ammo. When you unlock extended mags 2, you have over 900 rounds, which ranks the second most ammo in the entire game, which is absurd for an assault rifle. An assault rifle should not have 900 rounds. This is probably the most efficient full auto AR I've ever seen in zombies. The DPS is all right, a little bit above average, but nothing crazy. Overall, we're just getting into a much more loaded territory, so I can't put this really any higher because the weapons ahead of this are going to be just as efficient and they're going to kill much quicker. At 13, this is going to be the AN-94. The AN-94 has great ammo, it's got great damage. The fire rate is a little bit low, but the DPS is still really good because the damage makes up for the lower rate of fire, especially since high cal benefits the AN more than any other weapon in BO4. Originally, I thought this would be about the second or third best assault rifle, but with how much the attachments help out the AN-94, it gets plenty of extra ammo because of hybrid mags. It has a suppressor, you get to do more damage with the high cal, find that the AN becomes much more effective. Overall, you can't really go wrong with the AN-94. At 12, I have the Javelina. The Javelina is a DLC sniper. It is semi-auto, and although it's a very quirky weapon, the Javelina, when given attachments, is a solid option. And yeah, I know snipers, they're not exactly the greatest fit in Black Ops 4, but with how some of them perform, you just cannot ignore the mega positives of these weapons, especially when talking about the semi-auto snipers. What makes this gun so quirky is the fact that it's easily the clunkiest sniper in the game. The recoil for this thing is very weird. It's not bad, but it's just a bit off. Also, when reloading the Javelina, it will not reload the whole mag if you have speed loader unless you're only reloading a small to medium portion of your mag. But if you have like your whole mag out and you have extended mags on this thing, which it has 27 rounds in the mag, it will only reload about 18 of those. Let me make this very clear. The speed loader is a necessity when using the Javelina, because if you do not have it, it has the worst reload in the entirety of Call of Duty Zombies history. If you do not have speed loader, this is one of the worst weapons in the entire game, and I do not recommend using it at all. You have to have speed loader if you're going to use the Javelina. But other than a few weird features, the Javelina is a mostly great weapon if you have the right attachments. At number 11, we're going to have the Auger. This is a semi-auto rifle that has a high damage and is super easy to use. And not to mention, it's a wall weapon. The operator mod makes it a 2-round burst. Long story short, don't use it. You're going to shoot a little bit slower, you're going to waste a little bit more ammo, and there's no real purpose to using it. It's honestly such an easy weapon to use, and obviously when you have a semi-auto DM-bar type weapon, you are going to shred zombies so quickly. It's easily one of the best wall weapons this game has to offer, and I cannot recommend this enough. Moving on to the top 10. At number 10, we have the Tiger Shark. And although I'm not too fond of the Tiger Shark personally, this weapon is undoubtedly one of the best weapons in the game. It's kind of a hybrid between an assault rifle and an LMG. It has by far the highest headshot damage of any LMG in the game. However, it has a below average rate of fire, and although it does hold a good amount of ammo, it's the lowest in the LMG class, but it's still really good. The Tiger Shark, I would say, is the swiftest LMG, and what I mean by that is not the damage per second, not the rate of fire, but like the small things. The reload speed is practically instant when you have fast mags, and the ability to put stock 2 on this thing is extremely helpful, especially for training. This might be the best LMG in the game for training just because of this. Although when you are camping, its flaws are actually a bit more apparent, which is why I even considered putting some of these weapons a little bit higher than the Tiger Shark. However, I just don't think the weapons below this are so much better in that regard to justify putting it ahead of the Tiger Shark. Honestly, like the last 5 weapons I've said, along with probably the next weapon on this list, are all probably neck and neck with how close they are in terms of effectiveness. It really just depends on what map you're playing and what strat you're running, and what perks you're also running. Overall though, the Tiger Shark is a very, very good gun. At number 9, the Outlaw. This is the best bolt action sniper in this game by a country mile. The Outlaw is an extremely unique weapon, having a quick rechamber. The Outlaw feels almost like a semi-auto despite the lacking of the semi-auto feature. Before we go any further, let's talk about the operator mod. This operator mod is called the bolt cylinder, and what it will do is it will turn the Outlaw into a 3-round burst. However, I think that the operator mod is very situational. It's not a recommended or a not recommended. You do have a higher RPM with the bolt cylinder, but it's not too much higher than the Outlaw with just rapid fire. And not only that, but you're automatically going to shoot 3 bullets. So if you don't need to use 3 bullets, it can be a waste at some points. The RPM isn't much higher, mainly because the burst delay is absolutely terrible. Through my testing using this in both single player and co-op, I kind of came to the conclusion that without the operator mod, the Outlaw serves several different purposes, but with it, its only real purpose is to take out large hordes. It was more efficient to simply not use the operator mod, and the operator mod didn't provide enough of a benefit, in my opinion, to justify using it, but that was just for the way that I was playing. For some of you, it may be different, so for this, I think it depends on how you play zombies. You definitely need to try this out, because I don't think this is a yes, you should use it, or a no, you shouldn't use it. You need to see what fits your playstyle the best, and what fits your playstyle the best, you should use. If you don't want to run high cal, you don't have to, because the Outlaw is going to one-shot to the head anyway if you have it fully pack-punched. So if you want to run something else, that's totally fine as well. Now back to the regular gun itself. The weapon is an efficient powerhouse, holding well over 200 rounds, which is honestly disgusting for a sniper, especially since it can one-shot, headshot for the entirety of a normal zombies game. I found this to be much of a better training weapon than a camping weapon. The only reason it's not higher is that when you are camping, it is much tougher to be effective than when you're training, and camping is the more prevalent playstyle in Bo4, so because of that, I ended up putting this right here. At number 8, this is where things start to get really, really interesting. This is the Hades. This is essentially the Dingo of Black Ops 4 Zombies. The Hades is an incredible LMG. It has lots of ammo, it's got great damage, it's extremely versatile, it doesn't really have any weaknesses at all, just like the Dingo did. The only reason I don't think this is better than the Dingo is mainly just due to penetration power, but I do think the attachments are a little bit better for the Hades than they are for the Dingo. With the attachments, it's kind of weird because the Hades has an operator mod called the crossbar, and what it will do is it will allow you to kind of aim down sight from like the hip, but it allows you to move very quickly whenever you're using it. So it's actually pretty good. But the thing is that even though this is extremely popular, I don't always use the crossbar. A lot of times I just like to use the Hades just how it is with regular attachments. I'm not saying that the crossbar is bad, because I think it's actually really good. Whenever I'm camping, I don't see as much of a reason to use it sometimes. And the reason for that is because I seem to have a bit more precision without the crossbar, but the crossbar is quicker. So it really just depends. Do you want more precision, or do you want more swiftness? Because with the crossbar, you're going to have to lose 2 attachments,
and a sight. So really, you're losing 3 attachments, which can be worth it if you use it correctly and if it fits your playstyle the best. I see some people go back and forth on the Hades and the Zweihander, talking about which LMG is better. This is way better than the Zweihander. I like the Zweihander, but with the Hades, there is so many good things that I can say about the Hades. But if you have this thing with full attachments, you already know how good this is. At number 7, this is going to be the trench gun, or in this game, it's called the Trebuchet. This is the best shotgun in the game, if you would even consider this a shotgun, because this turns into a grenade launcher when you pack-a-punch it. With the blast radius, it probably affects about 4 to 6 zombies on average, but it can affect upwards of 10, 12 zombies or so. It can affect a lot of zombies, but it's inconsistent on how much it will affect. Obviously, PhD is going to be recommended for this because you are going to take a lot of explosive damage when you're using the trench gun, but it is very well worth using PhD because this gun is amazing. You're going to get kills quickly. Boss zombies are going to be dead instantly from this thing. One downside to this, though, no attachments. You cannot put a single attachment on the trench gun, which honestly, it's probably what's going to keep it from being the best wall weapon in the game. If it did have attachments, then I could probably see it being number 1 in the wall weapon category, but I think there's still one wall weapon that outperforms the trench gun. At number 6, the best wall weapon in the game, the Mozu. The Mozu is not only the best wall weapon in the game, but also the best pistol in the game by a very wide margin. So imagine the Python and the Executioner for Black Ops 2, and imagine they had a baby, and the baby was the Mozu. I would say that the Mozu is probably more similar to the Python, but the thing is that with the Mozu, it has more ammo than both the Python and the Executioner by a long shot. The Executioner did not have a headshot multiplier, the Mozu and the Python do. And not only that, but this is a wall weapon. I have no idea why this is a wall weapon, especially because of how much better it is than the Python and the Executioner. This is essentially a pocket sniper rifle that shoots really quickly. The operator mod is called the Skull Splitter, and what it will do is it will do a much higher amount of headshot damage. I've heard some people say, man, the Skull Splitter, it like one-shots till like round 40. No, it doesn't do that, okay? I want to clear that up right now. The Skull Splitter is going to make it to where it's got a few extra rounds of one-shot capabilities. You will not be able to one-shot for the entirety of a normal game with the Skull Splitter. You'll get close. It'll stop at about round 33. I know some people are going to ask, why the heck am I using the scope on the freaking Mozu? Honestly, the scope's not bad on the Mozu because 1, it aims in really quickly, and 2, the iron sights aren't that great, and 3, the scope actually does help hit headshots, which is going to be very important when using the Mozu. Honestly, try the scope on the Mozu. It's actually pretty good. Going into the top 5, we are going to have the Vendetta. Literally, I never hear anyone talk about the Vendetta in Black Ops 4. It is a DLC sniper, and it is very good. This is the only sniper that cannot one-shot headshot for the entire game, but it's got so many qualities that it makes up for the fact that it can't one-shot for the entire game. It shoots super quickly. The DPS is the highest of any sniper, and honestly, it might even be higher than any weapon in this game in terms of bullet weapons. Attachments are overall pretty solid, but it does have an operator mod that I don't recommend. It's the bipod, and what the bipod will do is that when you're prone, you will be able to have full auto capabilities, but 1, you're not going to really be prone in zombies, and 2, if you've got a good trigger finger, you can pretty much have full auto capabilities if you shoot fast enough. This gun in general is pretty similar to the Mozu, but it performs at a better rate, having more efficiency and a better DPS. And overall, I just think it's much easier to use than the Mozu. I think it's better for taking out boss zombies as well. Overall, that's why I put this ahead of the Mozu, but in all honesty, if you want to grab the Mozu instead because of its wall buy, I can understand that. The Mozu is much easier to come across, obviously, and you can buy more ammo for it. So if you think that the Mozu has more value, I can completely understand that. But for this list and the way I rank stuff, I put the Vendetta ahead of the Mozu. At number 4, we have the SDM. The SDM is the best sniper rifle in the game. It's kind of like the Draken of Black Ops 4. Its damage is going to be able to one-shot headshot for the entirety of a normal game. As a semi-auto, its rate of fire is also solid, and the ammo is great as well. With attachments, you can literally put a drum mag on the SDM because it has extended mags too. There is no operator mod, but the attachments are pretty fine for the most part. There is high caliber as an attachment for the SDM, but
Weapons like the SDM and the Outlaw, I can see a reason to not use high caliber, and the reason why is because when you fully upgrade these weapons, you're going to be able to one-shot headshot when they're fully upgraded anyway, so what's the point of using high cal? I can see it in hardcore, that's fine, but in normal mode, I don't see much of a purpose to using high cal on weapons like the SDM and the Outlaw, mainly just those two. The overall abilities of the SDM is what honestly just makes it so good. Snipers, like I said, are a bit harder to use in this game, but the SDM is actually extremely easy to use. I will say also with sniper rifles that I probably didn't say before, with sniper rifles, the optic, I think, is really about preference. So obviously in the recommended attachments, you'll see sometimes I put dual zoom, sometimes I'll put recon, sometimes I will just put like threat detector. The thing is that it really just depends on what fits you the best. If you want to run the normal scope, you go right on ahead. If you want to use an iron sight, go right on ahead. Whatever fits you the best. Sometimes I prefer the threat detector, sometimes I prefer a dual zoom. Not everything has all of the attachments, so like, for example, the Koshka, for example, doesn't have a dual zoom. It only has a recon, it only has an elo, and an iron sight. So of those three, I kind of prefer the recon. But it's all about preference. Whatever fits you the best, use that. The SDM is a fantastic weapon. Cannot recommend it enough. Essentially, it's the Drake in a Black Ops 4. Very good weapon. Getting into the top three. We are going to start a dialogue. So let's rewind back to 2018 where a younger and dumber EZP40 is playing the new Call of Duty Black Ops 4, grinding for the super cool dark matter camo that you can get in Zombies, which everyone was totally loving and not complaining about, by the way. After playing some Zombies and using some of the weapons, I noticed that an LMG is in the game that I haven't tried yet, the VKM. I looked at it, looked at the stats, and then went to try it out and immediately noticed that it had several similarities to the Gorgon for Black Ops 3. If you have watched this channel to any extent, you already know how much of a Gorgon stan I am. I love the Gorgon. It's got absurd ammo. The efficiency of it is insane. Great damage. The penetration power is incredible. I love that gun. So when I noticed that the VKM had a high damage in the menu and it shot super slow in the game, I started to realize where this was headed. Then I upgraded the VKM and it came with goodness gracious. Surely this weapon had to be good, right? No. The VKM had great ammo, but the headshot damage was only about half of the Gorgon's. Along with that, the weapon fired explosive rounds, meaning there'd be no chance for penetration damage. After using it for a little bit, and after an even longer period of using it for dark matter, I deemed the VKM as an absolute failure. What a way to ruin a weapon that could have been so great. I was extremely disappointed, and once I got gold, I never used the VKM again. Until, fast forward to 2024, I now have a YouTube channel, and I've been working on a video ranking all the Black Ops 4 weapons. However, in order to do this, I need to be objective in testing these weapons to the best of their abilities. This, unfortunately, meant that I had to use the VKM. So when it became the VKM's turn to run China Alley on the Blood of the Dead camping test, I had to find it out of the box. My perks during the test usually remained similar. All camping tests were given Stone Cold Stronghold and Winter's Wail in the modifier slot. I usually had Mule Kick so that way I could have more weapons during my tests, and I had Secret Sauce so that way I could usually change my perk if I needed something else. But usually I would just run like a Dying Wish or a Quick Revive if I could. As I camped with the VKM, I noticed that the splash damage was only about 3 damage, which isn't much, but when you're shooting several times up close, that health is going to drain pretty quickly. But the good news is that it had a stun effect on the zombies to keep me from constantly getting hit, which actually kind of helped. So, once I got a dog round, I went for the Secret Sauce and changed my perk from Quick Revive to PhD. This started in the early 20s, and once I got PhD, I became invincible. Yes, you heard me, the VKM turned into an absolute monster. Because when you have that stun effect on the VKM and combine it with the perks that help out for camping, the zombies have tremendous difficulty hitting you. You're not taking any damage from the gun because PhD is active, and even if the zombies hit you too much, the Winter's Wail will simply freeze them, allowing you to be completely safe. But that's not going to happen that much, because with Stone Cold Stronghold, that's going to give you extra armor, allowing you to be extra safe. Once you do enough damage to get your special weapon charged, you use that, you reload, and you do it all again. Yep, not even kidding. Not even kidding one bit. I was blown away how I never found this earlier. The VKM, one of my least favorite guns of all time, ended up surpassing some of the greatest weapons in Zombies history. It's incredible. I can't believe I'm saying that, but the VKM is actually unstoppable. It is genuinely one of the greatest weapons in this game and one of the greatest weapons of all time with the right perks. Getting into the number 2 spot, I have the Stingray. The Stingray is the best DLC weapon in Black Ops 4 Zombies. This is a 2-round burst tactical rifle, and it's by far better than any other basic rifle. Essentially, what makes the Stingray so good is the fact that it has the best operator mod in the entire game. The operator mod is called the Impact Blast, which makes your projectile shots explode when it impacts the enemy. And for context, what makes this so good is 1, it takes down boss zombies in a heartbeat, literally killing big guys in less than 20 shots. And 2, and more importantly, the Stingray will take off heads for the entire game, even when it's not upgraded. For more context, with headshot damage, I always look at when the gun stops taking the head off of the zombie, as that's usually the stopping point of its one-shot capabilities. However, not only can the Stingray one-shot throughout the entirety of a normal game, but it'll also do it in hardcore. To test this theory, I went into Tagged or Toten on hardcore and ran the Stingray. Reason why is because the health cap is just much more similar to a normal zombies game for Black Ops 1 through 3. So even after round 35, the health for zombies is still rising. Even with this, the Stingray was taking heads off of even in the 50s. From my research and to my knowledge, as far as I know, the Stingray technically has infinite headshot damage, as it will constantly take heads off, which is massive. I would compare this heavily to the Rift E9 from Black Ops 3's Revelations, but honestly, I think it's even better than the Rift. It has other attachments like stock, hybrid mags, rapid fire, and suppressor, which are great, but you can only run 3 of those if you want to run Impact Blast, which I highly recommend. So, of those 4, I would probably get rid of hybrid mags, unfortunately, because those other 3 just serve way too much of a purpose. If this list was based off hardcore alone, this would have a really good argument at number 1. However, in my opinion, this gun is still the second greatest weapon in the game, and in my opinion, is nothing less than the most underrated weapon in Zombies history. And number 1, the Helion Salvo. I mean, I don't think this was a surprise to literally anybody. The best weapon in BO4 by a country mile. This is literally better than the wonder weapons of this game for the most part. There is no reason to not run the Helion Salvo because it doesn't really have a weakness other than splash damage, but you can fix that with PhD. And if that wasn't broken enough, there are attachments that also make the Helion Salvo stronger than what it already is. I will note that this weapon is not infinite damage like most people think it is. It just seems like that because of normal mode health capping at 35. The Helion actually falls off shortly after round 35 in hardcore mode. It's easily the best weapon in this game, and those who have played Black Ops 4 to any extent already knew what this was going to be like. This was a battle for second place from the very beginning because the Helion Salvo it's simply peak. 91 Jordan, 13 LeBron, 06 Kobe, 2000 Shaq, 16 Curry, 23 Jokic, 14 Durant, the list goes on and on. So if you're a big BO4 fan, you've probably noticed that there's a weapon missing from this list. And there is. The ballistic knife. I wanted to go over this ballistic knife in its own sort of category. And the reason why is because it fluctuates way too much. In a regular game, the ballistic knife is one of the worst weapons to have. However, if you're playing a map like Alpha Omega and you are trying to high round, this is literally the best weapon in the game. Yes, even better than the Helion Salvo. Not because the weapon is good, but because you can run a strategy with Electric Burst as your modifier and Ethereal Razor. This allows you to essentially knife your way to round 100. I know some people will think, well, because of this, the ballistic knife should be up there really high on the list. However, the problem I had with this list and that I went back and forth with is that you can do this with other weapons other than just the ballistic knife. The Reaver, for example, you can do the same thing with the Reaver, but I'm not going to make a Reaver a top 3 weapon just because of that. This is what made the ballistic knife super hard to rank, and this is why I really give it a special spot on this list, because on maps like Tagged or Toten and Alpha Omega, which I know you can run it on those 2 maps. I don't know what else you can run it on for the knife strategy, but for these 2 maps, it is the best weapon, if not the second best weapon in the game. But on some other maps, it's probably a bottom 3 weapon in the entire game. So because of how much it fluctuates, I thought it would be better to list it as its own sort of different category and list it like this, rather than just throwing it into the list. Yet again, this is why I don't like to rank non-bullet weapons. Because stuff like this happens and it becomes extra complicated, and it's not a simple yes it's better or no it's not better answer. Thank you for watching this video. This was very, very difficult to make. This is the hardest video I've ever had to make, and hopefully it'll be the hardest video I ever have to make. The reason why this was not a part of the weapon ranking series, well, the thing is that there's just too many differences with Black Ops 4. The weapon ranking series is extremely restrictive, and because of that, I would have had to leave out a lot of things in this list. And I don't think it would have been very good for the list. I would have had to take out a lot of perks, no attachments. A lot of the guns would have had to been out, like the Helion Salvo. And overall, man, I just didn't think, when comparing this to the older weapons, there's too many differences, and combine that with the fact that Bo4 is just so much different of a game, I decided to rank it in its own category. So, unfortunately, it will not be a part of the weapon ranking series. I really wanted to include it, but my goal here is to be objective, and I had to look this with an objective view, not what I wanted. Yes, I wanted to include it, but after looking at this from a very, very objective standpoint, the best way to move forward is to simply split this up. So the weapon ranking series will be out hopefully sometime this summer, I'm hoping for, but that's going to be a really long video. I just had to make a video ranking 50-something weapons. That's going to be like 150 weapons. So that is going to be another video that's going to take a very long time to make. However, because I don't want to leave Bo4 fans out of the loop, because I think there's been a lot of support for Black Ops 4 as of late, and I really appreciate you guys that support Black Ops 4. So what I might do, after I release the weapon ranking series, what I might do is I might make a video talking about some of the weapons in this game without attachments. Just not really a ranking, but just kind of some info and just kind of some, just a small little video to show how some of the Bo4 weapons work without attachments and how different they are with attachments. But now that this video is done, man, I feel a lot better, because this video, I've worked extremely hard on this video. It was a pain in the butt, but I'm glad it's out, and I'm glad that we can have some clarity on some of these weapons, because a lot of these weapons don't get talked about, and this game in general just doesn't get the credit it deserves. Black Ops 4 is a fantastic game, especially zombies. Also, if you're wondering why this video isn't 30 FPS, it's because this video was too long to export into 60 FPS. If you've got questions or anything, feel free to ask, because I know obviously with some of these weapons, you guys may have questions with that, and that is totally fine. Ask away. If you want more updates on this channel, the best way to get those updates is through Discord. I have a Discord channel that I will have a link for down below in the description. Other than that, though, I've got nothing else for you guys today. Have a good one. I will talk to you all later.